Yo, this is ELUCID, and you are listening to the Cabbages podcast.
Gary.
Yes, Jeff.
Gary. They sent the Leprechaun to space.
They did.
The Leprechaun thus far, see if you can follow me here.
Okay.
The Leprechaun so far has gone to the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
Los Angeles.
Hollywood, California.
Vegas.
Sin City.
Space. How did the Leprechaun get into space, Gary?
I don't know. I fully accept that there's no continuity between them. There's still a part of me that can't get around how he fucking got into space.
Gary, they sent the Leprechaun to space.
They did.
And we watched it. I watched it more than once. Yeah, I've seen it 3 times in my life now.
Yeah, it's 3 for me too.
And each time at the very end, I'm left with this idea that, like, we were so close to having a leprechaun be the king of space, and we let the humans win. This really bothers me. We let the humans win. We sent the leprechaun to space, and we let the humans win.
And none of the humans in this film were particularly redeemable or worthwhile in any way, shape, or form.
This has been a thing that you have heard me say multiple times on the show.
Mm-hmm.
There's no character that's as awesome as the Leprechaun. Not once have I been like, oh, okay, a worthy foe for the Leprechaun.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are idiots.
None of them are ever a match for the Leprechaun or ever a real challenge for the Leprechaun. You know,
he's the genius from Colombia.
Well, he was in Leprechaun 2, and in this being there no continuity, he is just some space leprechaun. Now,
agree to disagree.
I have tried. Don't you agree to disagree on me? That's my bit.
Agree to disagree, Gary. There's even if there's no continuity, there's got to be a beautiful middle ground or something.
I don't think there is. I remain vexed by this question. It is hard to get through this movie multiple times without constantly asking yourself how he got to space. And if I may, I'd like to read a passage from Warwick Davis's memoir, Size Matters Not.
Does it tackle this problem?
It addresses this problem.
Okay, let's go. I'm ready.
I can't say you're going to be happy with what you hear, but here we go. So just to give you a little backstory, he comes out of a movie called Prince Valiant. It bombed. He wanted to move on quickly, so he gets the script for the next Leprechaun film and finds out that it's in space. So he says, I have no idea what actually happened, but I can imagine the production meeting went something like this. Suit 1. What to do with the Leprechaun next? Suit 2. Put him in space. Suit 3. How did he get there? Suit 2. Doesn't matter. Suit 3. But he died in the last film. Suit 2. Doesn't matter. And that is Warwick Davis's thoughts on how the Leprechaun.
We should put that on as a short play, like those old like Orson Welles theater sort of thing.
So like a reenactment radio play.
A reenactment radio play of that, and it's that long.
It's just that. I mean, yeah, I think we do have to talk about bonus content, and I think most podcasts there's bonus episodes and bonus content. Idea. So
Gary,
we may need to do that.
I'm full of good ideas.
I mean, I wouldn't say full, but you have some occasion.
But see, that's where we differ because I speak for myself and you don't speak for me. So full. I'm full of good ideas.
Well, you're full of something.
I'm taking my autonomy back, Gary. I'm feeling good. You know what? I'm ready to tell you. Leprechaun in space was the best of the movies yet.
Well,
The acting was the best.
I think we're gonna have to get into that a bit deeper, and I'm excited to hear what our guests have. So, if you don't mind, can I go ahead and record the intro?
No, I don't mind.
Hello, and welcome to Shamrocks, the Leprechaun movie podcast, the only unofficial weekly hip hop podcast about the Leprechaun cinematic universe. I'm your host, Gary Suarez. I'm a freelance music journalist and critic, and I write a twice-weekly hip-hop newsletter called Cabbages, which you can subscribe to for free at cabbages.substack.com. Joining me as always is my co-host, music industry insider, Jeffery Laughlin. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you?
They sent the Leprechaun into space.
Today, we'll be talking about Leprechaun 4, the 1997 movie that the AV Club called, quote, a desperate ploy to continue a horror series without having to pay any attention to continuity or the laws of reality.
The Leprechaun went to space, Gary.
We'll be right back. I'm so excited to introduce our guests for today's show. Joining us now is Zena Tsarfin. She's formerly served as managing editor at High Times and XXL Magazine, as well as in editorial and digital positions at Marvel, Revolver, and iHeartRadio. She currently works as the audience engagement editor for The Counter, a nonprofit and nonpartisan outlet for food journalism. Also joining us today is ELUCID. The New York rapper has recorded for labels including Backwoods Studios, Mellow Music Group, and Ruby Yacht, both as a solo artist as well as in collaborative projects such as Small Bills and Nostrum Grocers. He's a member of the critically acclaimed duo Armand Hammer, whose forthcoming album is called Haram and available to pre-order from backwoodsstudios.com. Please welcome ELUCID and Zena to the show. Hello, welcome to you both.
Hi.
What's up?
Well, this is a very auspicious occasion for a number of reasons. And the thing I'm most excited about is that we are recording this episode on the eve of the 24th anniversary of the release of Leprechaun 4 in space.
Has it been 24 years old?
It will be tomorrow. It will be
Wow.
tomorrow.
That movie is 24 years old.
24 years old. Came out in
Right
February
now
of 1997.
97?
1997.
Wow. When was the first Leprechaun?
93.
93. That's wild.
Yeah. So it's 93, 94, 95, and then 97.
So the first thing I noticed when I saw this movie, the only character I recognized was the actor who played Joanna Man.
That was Joanna Man.
Did Joanna Man come out before or after Leprechaun 4?
Oh.
After.
Okay. This set them up. This is the platform.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
2000. That's 2002.
Okay.
So you got a little bit of time for that one.
Damn. Okay.
So, ELUCID, I'm to take to understand this. Had you seen a Leprechaun movie before we asked you to do this show?
Never. I was maybe only familiar with like Leprechaun in the Hood because of maybe like late night, like cable TV. Like I feel like Leprechaun might have come on like the USA channel, maybe like the late 90s that I maybe have seen a couple, and then like memes and shit.
Yeah,
that's it. This is my first Leprechaun, and to be honest, I did not make it through.
You did not make it through.
I rented it and I had like 48 hours and I did not make it through. I got to where they started battling. They met up with Leprechaun, the whole squad, and they were like shooting out in the lab. And then, I guess the last 30 minutes.
Okay, so there's a few things that you missed, and we'll bring you up to speed. Don't worry.
Yeah, should we spoiler alert you?
I guess the question is like, are you going to re-rent it?
No, I'm gonna say I think I should be Venmoed $4 for this rental.
I can take care of that. Honestly, like that.
No doubt, we can exchange.
We did this to you. I understand.
Jesus.
This is gonna blow minds then, because I find this to be easily the most delightful Leprechaun movie we've seen yet. By far and away.
And I'm inclined to agree. But before we talk about our feelings about the film, I'm really quite pleased to have Zena on as a guest. And for a number of reasons. I think the biggest is that she is our first Leprechaun expert on the show.
Expert.
And so I'm sort of wondering, Zena, if you could tell us a bit about your experience with the Leprechaun movies as a viewer and as an owner of a certain Leprechaun item of note.
I don't know if expert is really up to my capabilities. I will say I've seen all the movies and I am the proud owner of the Pot of Gore box set, which ends with Lep in the Hood. So I think I probably first got into these movies just because I really love that kind of Nightmare on Elm Street kind of schlocky comedic horror. I'm not really good with like gore or anything like that. So I think these kind of movies were up my alley just for that. Plus I'm short and kind of angry, so maybe I could relate to the Leprechaun. But I do remember I did buy this when I was living near the Virgin Megastore in Manhattan. When I was still managing editor at Double XL, we used to get these ridiculous cash bonuses from a certain editor. Thanks, Al. And so I think out of almost spite, one of my purchases at Virgin Megastore that day was the Pot of Gore box set.
Wow.
Up until that point, I'd probably only seen one, Jennifer Aniston's debut, plus the LA Gear sneakers that all girls wanted back in the day, and probably Lep in the Hood, either rented or on cable somewhere. So I came to own it, and I worked at High Times, and so perhaps in some kind of cleaning frenzy, I definitely saw all of them at least once, but I'd forgotten a good part of it. And for this podcast, I actually did the due diligence and went back and watched them all.
Watch them all. Oh my goodness, that is above and beyond. We should Venmo you.
Well, I have the box set, so maybe for like snacks and shit.
Yeah, snacks.
True.
I think it's a snacks for
Ice cream bill.
Wow. Well, okay. So I think that we've got this interesting balance of somebody who has experience with these films, who has put a significant amount of money from their bonus into it, and has devoted the time to rewatching the series ahead of this call. And then we have a guest who couldn't get through the entire 4th volume of the series, which I think is a great dynamic. And I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation that we're going to have about this movie that is certainly the strangest in this very strange series. It's a very convoluted plot. The Leprechaun seeks to be, for lack of a better term, the king of the universe by convincing a space princess to marry him. The tone is sort of part Starship Troopers, part Aliens. There's a little bit of Jurassic Park in there. And it's the second of the movies that went direct to video. I'm sort of wondering, and I'm going to ask this for you, Zena, because you have gone back through, where do you rank this in the overall series?
Let's see. It's still better than Back to the Hood, which is awful. And I think it was better than
Lep in the Hood Part 2? Would that be?
Yeah, total.
I got you.
Yeah,
Back
just
in the Hood.
absolute miss. But in having gone back and seen it, I have to say that I think the last 30 minutes of this film are probably the most fun of the entire movie. So I will say that, because I was pretty tired of them running down the same hallways a million different times, because you could tell like the set was just so cheap. But I think honestly, besides Lep in the Hood, which is obviously the best of the series, this is probably below Las Vegas. I thought Las Vegas was a lot of fun, and in rewatching it, I thought it was quite delightful, and I really enjoyed it. So I think right under Las Vegas, I'd place this one.
Counterpoint: they sent the Leprechaun to space.
But how did he get there?
It doesn't matter.
How did he end up in
the
space?
king of space wants to be the king of space.
Did he know there was space gold? Has all the gold been mined off Earth? How did he get there?
Why is gold important to people in space?
Well,
that's my biggest question from all of this. Is you go to, like, if I go to space, my whole expectation is I'm leaving the world behind. You know what I mean? Like, we're making a fresh start. We're going out to outer space. He's like, no, it's going to be the same financial
earthly
system
riches
based on earthly riches.
Yeah.
And these people are like, absolutely, we'll do anything for gold.
So then, is this a commentary on capitalism?
Absolutely.
I actually feel like there's a lot of commentary in the Leprechaun movies. This one is definitely Earth-centric, because one of the things that we could get to later that happens later on is the whole contract dispute that happens.
Oh yeah.
With the Marines,
right?
Saying a contract runs out.
Right. So it's like, okay, so 30 days based on where? Earth time? Where on Earth? So there are a lot of things to question there, is what I'm saying. But in terms of values, I feel like in the Las Vegas one, there were a couple of jokes about healthcare for all, which I thought was very ahead of its time. And in this one, I think there might be capitalism.
Well, okay, the speech he gives specifically about the ills of socialism, he does that twice in the movie in this one.
Who, the Dr. Zero kind of guy?
No, the Leprechaun himself. Okay. Like there's a speech where he like goes off. Well, one, he's talking to his prospective bride, the queen.
The future Princess queen. Zerina.
Princess Zerina, yeah.
So he's talking to Zerina, and he like purposefully goes out of his way to like get her to admit her dad was foolish for giving money away to the subjects of the planet, and then tempts her with all of the riches, the earthly riches. And then on top of that, there's a soliloquy, right, where he like goes off about her sharing things 50-50 with him.
His greed was on full display.
He was definitely the greediest he'd ever been in this film.
He's clearly not in favor of, the redistribution of wealth, and he's definitely not in favor of giving back to the community. He's about hoarding. He's in a way, he's very much like a lot of American billionaires. We've had guests refer to him as a Trump-like figure before, and I think that rings true in this one. There's an alliance, and you can't really trust him at any point in this process. But there's nobody in this film who's looking out for anybody but number one. There's the dynamic between Tina, played by Jessica Collins, who had a lengthy run on the soap opera Loving and makes her direct-to-video debut here, and Sergeant Malloy, aka Books, Brent Jasmer of The Bold and the Beautiful. So again, you've got two soap opera.
Wait, she was the biologist. She was the biologist, and he was the guy who was like, "We don't have anything to talk about because I have a GED or something, a high school diploma."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, the biologist who knows karate, and I think that's important pointing out. But
I was struck by her hair. This is so ridiculous, but
please,
her hair. It was like very like lustrous and super thick, like abnormally thick. Am I off?
No, that just happens in space.
Just extra volume.
You just get there and you're like, damn, I look incredible. Wow.
I mean,
it's just a thing.
True.
You also have to assume that conditioner and volumizing technology had to have improved.
Super advanced. Man.
Far beyond 1997 standards.
Jesus.
It's funny because all I could really see was the 1990s eyebrows on her.
That was your focus.
Yeah, that was the super thin eyebrows. I'm still recovering from it.
We mentioned Princess Zerina, who is a similarly unscrupulous character. She had previously a recurring role on Baywatch, and like Tina, Jessica Collins made her direct-to-video debut here. Do you think that their alliance could ever have worked out?
I think there was always going to be a double cross. It would actually make for a very good sitcom between the two of them, better than WandaVision probably.
She's obviously physically repulsed by him in their first encounter. There's no ambiguity there, but he definitely seeks to have a physical relationship with her. And Zena, I know since you've seen the previous films, there has been, particularly in Leprechaun 2, a lot of discussion about the Leprechaun and sex. I'm
gross, guys.
I have not thought about that.
Unfortunately, we have thought quite a lot about it and discussed it on the show.
I have an opinion on this whole
sex
thing, but go ahead, Gary.
He can't have reasonably thought that they would ever do that together, right?
I 100% think that they would have definitely had sex.
Well, he shows up wearing
for the gold.
Clearly, he was there to impress her.
Right. He came in and like spoke in like a beautiful British accent and like was very elegant and kind
and had green
stuff.
champagne.
Like, he was putting on all the airs.
He did have the green champagne. He did.
Yeah.
Non-stop
it can be like
cap.
this if you want. I'll do whatever you want so long as you give me the power. And with that, of course, comes consequences for her.
Well, he literally jumped on a grenade for her.
It's true.
And that's how he died the first time.
He's not a very good, I guess, mythical, possible human-like creature.
Not a human, definitely a mythical
right.
creature, not human.
Yeah, I've kind of come around on that. I'm into the idea he's a mythical beast.
Yeah, he's not just an Irishman like you.
Right.
Okay.
I'm with that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we've gotten to this sort of
Mostly,
reconciliation.
but also though, I think you have to believe that the Leprechaun is going to somehow connive his way into marriage. That's the only way this works.
I didn't understand, like he was conniving his way into marrying her, but the only thing she seemed to be interested in, the fact that he could provide jewels and like gold. But it's like, if you're a princess, like, you'd have inheritance to all of these riches anyway. So like, what?
So that's covered by the idea that the father has given away the entire kingdom.
Oh, so she feels shafted
as a socialist. So that's why the hook is, I'm not going to do that. You can have whatever you want.
Yeah, the king is sort of a Bernie Sanders type figure. And
got you. Okay.
And the Leprechaun is your bog standard Republican.
Bog standard.
Listening to new ears. Okay.
And originally he did have intentions of, having an actual marriage, but halfway through he really is a greedy bastard and decided he didn't want to share 50-50. He really thought he was marrying in like California or something. So that's when he decided that he was going to marry her and bury her on the same day.
Yeah, wed her, bed her, and bury her, he said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wed, bed, and dead. I was surprised he didn't go with dead. There was a critical lack of rhyming in this one.
Right. It did throw me off. I was like, he could have said deader. But
which, like, I'm assuming we're not allowed to talk about it yet, but I'm assuming Leprechaun in the Hood will solve that problem.
Look, I likened this film to sort of the vagina monologues of the series.
Jesus Christ! What?
Because in previous volumes he was big on limericks and rhyming, and that was a huge component. And in this one, he is speaking like a Shakespearean figure, talking to no one in particular except the audience, without rhyming being any component to that. And so it's fantastic because we do get to see Warwick Davis's range, but at the same time, there is a certain joy to hearing him delightfully rhyme. What is nice, however, I will say, is that while we lose that musical component with the Leprechaun in this film, we get the benefit of the amazing music in the bar / nightclub that is on this spaceship. What
a jam.
I was a bit thrown off by the fact that there is a bar and nightclub on a spaceship.
Right.
With a mirror ball.
With a mirror ball.
I felt like we were on a Star Trek Voyager type of ship. Does that make sense? Where there's like, you're spending a lot of time on that ship. So it didn't really surprise me they'd have like a place to blow off steam. But like, if you're all on the same ship and it's not that many of you, why do you need a bartender?
I would have said more of a Deep Space Nine approach, but
sure.
I guess that's just the difference between us.
Wow.
But
did we see a bartender though, or
maybe we didn't? There was a bar though.
They were tending their own bar and making their own drinks. There wasn't a separate person.
Okay.
I mean, they're grown-ups. They know how to make their own drinks. The music and the dancing was really something because it takes you out of the future component of this and reminds you that this is part of a genre of film we got in the 1990s, the sort of B movie that's kind of sexy, kind of corny, coming together, where there's like the prospect of people having sex under.
Yeah, it was softcore porn without the sex.
Right, the Skinamax, the Skinamax approach.
Skinamax.
And I'm sorry, we're going to have to keep talking about sex. I know that some of us might be uncomfortable about some of these topics, but I think we have to keep talking about it. The first scene where sex was on the horizon is when our poor unfortunate character known as Kowalski finds himself in a position where he, for lack of a better term, gives birth from his dick to the
exploding leprechaun penis. That was a great part.
That was a great scene.
In the Aliens films, you had the chest burster, and in this film, you had the dick burster. And I think that given that the Leprechaun seems so intent on betting his bride, why is he cockblocking?
I think that he derives a certain amount of just pure joy from people's struggles. So, what better time to make someone struggle than when they're about to have like a really good time?
So you're saying it's Schadenfreude?
Yeah, he loves Schadenfreude.
I think it was a missed opportunity for a threesome joke.
That's a good point. And I don't think anybody on this show thus far has given the Leprechaun a lot of credit for being the genius of Arnie, but that was pretty stupid.
I mean, he did make the joke about the prophylactic, which I think is, if you're improving, if you're riffing, you come up with ideas.
I love that word.
He didn't say condom. He said prophylactic.
Prophylactic.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
But he's known for these one-liners. There's some good ones in this film too. My favorite is, as Shakespeare said, shit happens.
Apropos of nothing.
But let's go back, because it's worth looking into how he got
to space
there in the first place. How he got inside of Kowalski.
Oh, to Kowalski.
No, how he got inside of Kowalski's body, where he came up like some kind of parasitic fish up through his urine.
Wait. Later in the film, this particular thing, he like entered through this guy's peeing, right?
Yes.
And then the Leprechaun sneaks into his body while he's peeing. Later, he just like manifests. So this was wild revenge for getting peed on, right?
That's right. That is what happened. Okay.
I just put that together.
Yeah.
But the Schadenfreude wasn't just for you two are being naughty. It was, you peed on me, and I'm going to explode out of you at the worst possible moment when you're about to bang the Tool Time girl.
Yes, that's the other thing to point out, that Dolores, that character, who has her own tragic death later, set to the This Little Piggy theme, was the model on Tool Time, the show within a show on Tim Allen's Home Improvement.
Way.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
Heidi right there.
Her straight-to-video debut, I assume, since everybody was making.
I think she might have done something before that, but it was a pretty long run. She was on like 136 episodes of Home Improvement. So
I have a question for ELUCID.
Mm-hmm.
What was the moment where you were like, "What? I'm not doing this. I can't. I'm going to bed. I'm not. What am I doing with my life?" Where were you left astray from the flock?
Man,
what's the last thing you remember being purely angry about?
I think maybe the bar scene. Bar scene when Woods was being like kind of a dick to what's her name? I think I cut it then. It's a couple of times. That I cut it. I did. So
you went back and tried, like you did it in sections and just couldn't do the
so then I picked it back up, right? I picked it back up at that bar scene, and that's when Kowalski gets offed. And I was like, all right, I'm in it. And I'm in my second viewing. And then I cut it again, maybe when, what's the guy? What's the doctor? Dr. Middle?
Dr. Mittenhand.
Mittenhand. When he starts like with the DNA shit, he's like transferring the DNA from the princess.
Yes.
So wait. I have a question about this part. Like he was trying to like poach her DNA to grow himself like a torso and a midsection and
an entire body.
Yeah. Bugged out.
He was gonna try and recreate his old body.
So bugged out.
It seems to me that Dr. Mittenhand, this is some real Boys from Brazil shit going on here.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like this is probably the impression I'm supposed to be getting is that this is a Nazi scientist who has somehow been able to survive.
Yeah, it's a total weird eugenic thing. And I couldn't like place his accent, but I was like, it's vaguely German. And what Mittenhand?
Mittenhand, like mitten on your hand.
Mittenhand. I don't know, man. He's a weird guy. It's a weird character.
That was one of the strangest characters I think anyone's ever encountered in a film. He looked like a weird like He-Man doll. And like we were just to believe that this was like the most brilliant person in the world. But like he was on televisions like through most of the movie and then was just like, oh, I've been here all along. Right. I actually was traveling with you and you just had no idea.
Which is something that actually got used in Prometheus, the Alien quote unquote prequel.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I think part of what's getting me about Dr. Mittenhand and this, this unspoken thing about him clearly being some kind of preserved Nazi scientist who has used technology to keep himself alive in this ridiculous way, is that the actor who played Dr. Mittenhand, Guy Steiner, played a Nazi on British television for many years on the show Allo Allo. So it's sort of stuck as a, I think for lack of a better term, it's sort of being typecast as the Nazi. And he's sort of really leaning into that. I almost thought maybe he was some future version of that character.
See, yeah, that's what I thought. I thought maybe that he was a callback to that character. And it took me a while to recognize that voice because it's been a long time since I've seen these movies anyhow. But when I went back to IMDb and saw what else he was in, I couldn't believe it was like Sergeant Gunther or something.
Yeah.
And I remember as a teenager seeing Allo Allo on PBS, hoping that like what was it? The like some other porno kind of show or The Young Ones were on.
Mm-hmm.
Because they used to do that on Saturday nights on PBS. And that's how I became familiar with it. And it blew my mind that this was the same guy.
I mean, that's the thing with it is so many of these people had TV roles before, and seems like such a real callback. He's not the only callback, though, interestingly enough. And this is where we get into one of my favorite characters in the film, and that's Sergeant Metalhead, played by Tim Colseri. Now, there is a scene where he makes a sort of a Full Metal Jacket style threat at Harold, the creepy scientist assistant, where he says, basically the equivalent of "I'll cut off your head and shit down your neck" that Arlie Ermy did in Full Metal Jacket in the first scene. But the actor Tim Colseri was actually in the movie Full Metal Jacket, playing.
That's tight.
He played the door gunner during the Vietnam half of the film, basically gunning down innocent people in there. But he was, in another extra twist, originally supposed to play the drill sergeant that Arlie Ermy ended up playing in an iconic role. So this was like him returning to a character that he was originally supposed to be playing. And so
that character was utterly pointless, right? Like he came in, he yelled at everybody for a while, but then like never really mattered to anything.
Come on, Metalhead?
Yeah, and then as soon as they got into battle, everything was just loosey-goosey and there were no rules anymore.
I like that he had the squads back when Mittenhand was trying to force them all to stay. Like I didn't like him at all, and then when I saw
he was a pretty shrewd
took
negotiator.
that leadership role, I was like, okay, I'm a little more sympathetic. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck that, we're out of here. The contract is over. We're leaving. And they didn't, but still, I like that he had that little show of leadership there. He was kind of like it to me.
It was wild that their price was so low for battling a beast that they had just watched.
I like the negotiation.
Live inside of a dude and blow his penis out. And then they were like, you know what? You can't kill him. He's obviously going to kill us all. I want 2.5% more.
Yeah. That's like
is that the net or the gross?
Right.
You know what? If I'm going to die, I'm going to die with the promise that I would have gotten paid a little more.
But did you get to his drag performance at the end? Because that was pretty momentous. That was pretty
Metalhead?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, see, you didn't get to see that scene. And
you're going to be free rent this. Send him another $4.99.
I don't know. If we talk about it, I think he probably won't.
I don't know. I think we might have to Venmo you $10 just to tempt you, because yes, after that wonderful scene where Metalhead is basically a stand-in for director Brian Trenchard Smith, arguing for greater percentage. It's a real Hollywood studio sort of debate about compensation in film. I mean, the points thing is like super direct in that. He then somehow falls prey to the Leprechaun in a way we hadn't seen before, where he is taken over by the Leprechaun and dance fight his Marines.
And sing. He was a song.
He was great. No, he lip sync. He lip synced for his life. Yeah. Total show tune. 39th in Maine, the 31st in Maine.
Lucky Chang.
Yeah. You know what? And he looks great. And he looks good. And he dance fought with books. And Books was very accepting. He was very like, you know, you look good. You look so good, Sergeant. He was into it.
A lot of movies from this era would have made some really some off-color jokes around that. There would have been, you know, homophobic stuff around that was very overt. They would have used certain language. There's a lot of room where this could have actually turned into some real problematic territory. And in fact, it doesn't do that. It kind of just plays up to the camp of it, like the birdcage almost, like how they're presenting it. It's a campy moment within a ridiculous film. And it should be pointed out that the birdcage came out in 1996. So it wasn't, you know, this is more Brian Trenchard Smith sort of appropriating from pop culture.
For jumping this far ahead in the movie, that means that he also missed Princess Serena's boobs.
I did see Princess Serena's boobs. Everyone
you did?
so
Okay, so you saw that.
Okay, good. I'm really glad you got to see those.
Okay, so am I.
Right. I guess she wasn't hypnotizing them, but I think she just showed her boobs and everyone was just like,
Oh yeah, all the dudes were reduced to pudding and we were like, oh, boobs. Like anytime there's boobs, dudes are just like, oh no.
Boobs with glitter even.
Yeah, they just melt. And like the best part was that it was to show them she was angry.
I've been known to do the same, guys. I've been known to do the same.
Fair.
Called the close friends feature on Instagram.
This is something that is recurring in the Leprechaun films, not in the first one, but starting with the second Leprechaun movie, there have been topless scenes, quite gratuitous, in every single one. This was the most gratuitous of all those scenes. Even more gratuitous than that, I would say, is the scene where Princess Serena and the Leprechaun restrain Dr. Mittenhand and have him ball gagged.
That was hilarious. When I first saw that, like, he has a ball gag as well. Okay.
Where did they find it?
Right.
Is it in the same place that sent the Leprechaun to space, I guess? We never really know. They're just automatically as a ball gag from someone's room. Like, here you
So
go.
I was wondering that about the ball gag and also about Metalhead's drag costume. Because is this something he came on board with and was doing in his like spare time in his personal barracks or whatnot? Or did the Leprechaun make it happen the way he did the handcuffs towards the beginning of the movie?
Right.
There's lots to think about here.
Probably brought it on board, you know, all this hyper aggressive masculine thing as a cover up for, you know, his other side. You know, he just like to play at night by himself.
I think that makes the most sense. I think there's some things you kind of fall into the Leprechaun as a master of illusion and having these abilities. But I think given the cast of characters that have been on this, we've seen in this film, it's entirely possible that somebody had a ball gag. It is inconceivable that.
Do you think that both of them had a ball gag? They were like, "No, I'll use mine. Like, don't. Yours is newer. It's fine. I'll use this one. I've been meaning to replace my ball gag." Anyway.
It's reasonable that there might be multiple ball gags in everybody's rucksacks.
This is dope. That's dope.
We're safe to assume that we're multiple ball gags.
I think it's reasonable. It's one of the areas of the film that makes a great deal of sense, as opposed to the transformation of Dr. Mittenhand into Mitten Spider, the horrific mutant,
but also Mitten Scorpion.
There were scorpions added in the blender too. Yes, there were.
Yeah, I mean, it's an arachnid, and that's, I think, sort of the alien influence coming back in again. You know, the H.R. Giger alien definitely has sort of scorpion-like sort of qualities to it physically. So I don't think that's out of reach. But I think Mitten Spider is just a better way of trying about it. And he does call himself Mitten Spider.
Right. True.
During his monologue, not only does the Leprechaun get his moments to speak to nobody in particular, so too does Dr. Mittenhand, now Mitten Spider. I couldn't quite figure out what he was doing to Joanna Man, though. I mean, was he trying to encase him in that? Was he planning on eating him later? I couldn't quite understand.
Yeah, he said. Remember, he said that he didn't want to be the fly. Spider. So I definitely thought that was like a takeoff of the Fly movie.
Also, Arachnophobia predates this as well, which had a gigantic spider.
Yeah, there's so many different moments in here.
It reminded me of that scene a little bit. But it seemed like Mitten Spider couldn't quite digest Joanna Man because he was only halfway in the whole time. And it was very strange. that scene.
I didn't get to that part. Oh man.
It's like he was hanging from some kind of like hentai like rope, kind of situation.
Oh.
Sorry, that's just me talking.
No, this is a very
No, that's fine.
look, I think
we already had multiple ball gags. It's more than fine.
The reality is that this is a disturbingly sexual movie. It comes in all different shapes and forms.
Gary, would you say it was a psychosexual thriller? A psychosexual thrill ride?
A thrill ride, yes. I don't think a thriller. Yeah, okay. I don't think it meets all the cinematic criteria for a thriller, but for a thrill ride, yes, absolutely.
Wild. That's fair.
Can I get a sense from people what your favorite death in the film was?
What's the woman's name who fell?
Oh, Dolores.
Only because she woke up to say, like, kill that bastard. I remember laughing at that part. Yeah.
Not like tell my mom I love her.
Yeah, right? Like this is your final words.
After just watching him come back to life. Thanks a lot. Great advice.
For me, it's probably Mitten Spider because I think all the explosive pieces, I feel like they really spent their money on those few key scenes. And that was one of them. Just the explosion.
So he does die at the end. Mitten Spider does die at the end.
Yeah.
Is he exploding?
Hardcore exploding.
Yeah.
Like liquid nitrogen.
Foam party. Yeah, like foam party and Ibiza exploding.
Oh. Because I just kind of like left off where he was like, everyone was shooting in the room and Mitten Hand was just kind of spazzing out and like jerking, like he was getting electrocuted, and I was like, he's gonna blow any second.
Oh no!
Yeah.
No, the third act is far wilder than that.
Okay, but like, also, can we just? I want to make a note about her death that was your favorite.
About Dolores, okay?
That the Leprechaun plays a Tweety Bird like game of this little piggy went to market.
Yes, he did before. Yeah.
With her as like this was in the middle of this. They're like, is this a kid's movie for 4 minutes? Maybe. And then she falls to her death. Why? What was that there for?
Maybe that was counting as rhyming.
That sucks. That's my biggest complaint about this film is the lack of rhyming.
His soliloquies reminded me of Pinhead when he talked about like power and how he was there to sort of deliver evil. So maybe that's what I liked about it because I really enjoy the Hellraiser series also.
Another very sexual character.
Right.
A Pinhead knows his way around some ball gags for sure.
Definitely.
The very definition of psychosexual.
And nipple clamps for sure.
But
I just learned very recently about like the sexual dynamics of Hellraiser. I'd had no idea. Like I saw it as a kid, but I'm a grown ass person and finally like understood. Like these people were just like total S&M freaks, like interstellar S&M freaks. I never connected to until very recently. But anyway.
I read the book when I was too young, and so the Hellbound Heart, the novella that Clive Barker did, that was making that.
That's what's wrong.
And so.
That's what's wrong with
me.
I've been trying to figure it out for years.
But my favorite death in this entire film is pure slapstick, pure comedy, pure Looney Tunes.
Pizza face.
It is Harold, who is killed by a face flattening tray. And then
the dumbest death. I
forgot about that. Yeah.
It's the best death in the entire series. He not only gets hit in the face and flattened like a cartoon character. Beyond that, he then says and falls to the ground like a cartoon character.
It's so stupid.
Like every other death has been absurd or some level reasonable. Yes, the dick burst is ridiculous. Lucky being killed by the lightsaber in the very beginning, that's absurd and that's funny and that's commentary. Flesh-eating bacteria.
Quick sidebar, Gary, do you think Lucky is a descendant of the Lucky from the third film?
I do not want to talk about that. I don't even want to.
Okay, great. Moving on.
There's no continuity between these movies.
Moving on.
And then you have Mooch, who's killed by a flesh-eating bacteria, which, like when you think about.
That's my most disappointing death.
Is that the most disappointing death to you? Why?
I really wanted to see where you just like it pans over and it's a skeleton. You're like, I guess you didn't really have the budget to make a flesh-eating virus thing, but I wanted to see Brian Trenchard Smith take a run at it.
I mean, but it was a real concern actually during those times. I mean, there was a lot of conversation in the 90s about Ebola, and a lot of
Ebola and shit. Yeah.
And a lot of misinformation about it too. So sort of
Yeah.
like the assumption would be like, oh, he's exposed to this bacteria and it just destroys him instantly. Like that, I don't think that's quite reasonable. But no, Harold turned this into a cartoon, and once that happened, it sets us up for the final act of the Leprechaun's. What's the best term for it? The Leprechaun's embiggening, where he grows to an extraordinary size. Again,
it's a perfectly cromulent word.
Honey, I grew the leprechaun.
Exactly. And ELUCID, I apologize that that this is another scene that you missed out on.
Spoiler.
I think it's the payoff.
Yeah.
He grows up.
So do you remember the laser that made the gold small
Yes.
for easier transport? It can be reversed, as had been discussed earlier. And it is used to make the leprechaun giant.
Like way, way bigger than humans.
Into an actual giant. In Warwick Davis's memoirs, he talks about this scene in particular. So they have all these.
Wow, you went deep, Gary.
Hold on. This is for real.
It's happened on every episode. The reaction is normally like, the what? Wait, what? Oh, wow. Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
So in Warwick Davis's memoirs, and he does talk about the Leprechaun movies extensively, he talks about doing the scene where he is large and looking for books looking for the character books amid these boxes, cargo boxes, which conceivably hold things like his gold. He shoots the scene, and Brian Trenchard Smith says to him, "That was great. We really like that, Warwick. Can you do it without doing the sound effects from your mouth, please?" Because what he had been doing was going around with the boxes going, having the time of his life, making mouth noises as he knocked over boxes to find
that guy's the best.
To find it.
Oh my God.
The Leprechaun rules. I love these movies. That is ridiculous.
I'm taking it back to the lab for a second because I actually did take notes when I watched this. I made my partner watch it last night. Yeah. And I asked him after the movie, I asked if there was any part of this film he actually enjoyed. And he just looked at me and said no.
0%?
Yeah, there's a note that says there's definitely a dildo in the lab scene. So if you scan over, there's definitely like a blue dildo just taking up space along with all the different like bottles, speakers and things like that.
I wonder if they filmed this in like a mall or something and they were just in the porn store for a lot of it. Because they were like, that's a whole lot of stuff just laying around that people have.
I feel like 60% of this movie was shot in that same warehouse/hallway scene that they kept running through.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that because this is such a low budget film, that it's conceivable that they were working with props from other low budget films. And given the types of movies, the Skinemax fare of the time, it's entirely possible, and porn, it's entirely possible that these were things that were lying around. And it's Easter eggs for fans to go back and notice later on. I'm excited now to go back and watch it. I have the movie up on my screen, as I often do when I'm recording these to look at. So I'm going to go back and check out that scene for sure. ELUCID, if you decide to do a rewatch all the way through, I encourage you to keep an eye open for the blue dildo.
We'll do.
I think we could all keep our eyes open for the blue dildo, you know? That's just
an
good
Easter
advice.
egg. It literally is an Easter egg. So I did have some thoughts about this, and I did listen to the last podcast just to sort of get ready to figure out what to expect.
Oh, terrific.
And there's this idea of the multiple leprechauns. And I hadn't given this any thought at all. But now I'm starting to think, just because like, how the hell else are you going to explain him being in space? That this is definitely some kind of like leprechaun clone situation, which to me implies that there's some kind of final boss leprechaun somewhere.
Huh.
Did I overthink this, guys?
No, I'm really into this.
This is we were going to get here at some point because Jeff and I have had an ongoing disagreement, and obviously Jeff is mistaken. There's no continuity between these films. The makers of these films, the studio execs themselves have said there was never any desire to have continuity between these films. The only thing that is a constant is that Warwick Davis plays the Leprechaun. There's nothing that says that it has to be the same Leprechaun in each film. There's nothing that calls back to the other films. It's not as if, it's Pinhead and Pinhead's the same Pinhead from each film. It's not Freddy Krueger. It's not the same one. It is a Leprechaun.
Unless you want to have fun and believe in a cool magical being that's doing cool shit. Unless you want that in your life. If you want to be a cold, calculated human that just stares at art for its aesthetic value, then yeah, go with Gary's explanation.
So the realistic standpoint, which is the one that
we have to represent both sides, Gary.
I mean, I'm liking actually the way Zena's thinking has taken her, where there is some kind of super leprechaun or boss leprechaun, or even if we're really got to get into this down this rabbit hole. There is like the alpha leprechaun. There is the one who made all of these guys. There is this sort of like a Dracula sort of figure where if you kill that one vampire, you kill them all, or you convert them back.
So there's a lepra god?
There is a lepra god?
Yeah. Is there a lepra god? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if we can get into a lepra god. I don't know if we have that kind of time on a show like this, but it is worth thinking. ELUCID, as somebody who has seen less than one of these films, I'd love... Yeah. Do you think that it is a ridiculous conversation to be thinking about whether or not there is a greater Leprechaun than the one we've seen on screen?
No, absolutely not ridiculous. I'm into the whimsy and the imagination. So
okay,
it's cool to hear y'all talk about it in this way and all these things that I've never even considered while I was watching it and hating. I was totally in hater mode, and I was amused at times. But it's cool to hear y'all plot these possibilities. I've never thought of it.
ELUCID, as a person that watches a lot of really awful films, you kind of have to create your own whimsy because they are bad. They're poorly made and stuff and not much money. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Zena's idea is brilliant. And it's a beautiful compromise in between our two worlds, Gary and I. And I'm going to give this some serious thought.
I guess the other probable theory is that he just has to, because he keeps exploding, right? So he just needs this certain amount of time to bring himself together. To go with a Phantom that I'm very not into, however, I did see the movies, but is the gold his Horcrux and he just needs to assemble a bunch of it and then he becomes his self again? That's another theory, but I'm going with my first one.
I love that theory too. These are great.
Hey, I watch I have a Buffy tattoo, you guys. I have a Buffy tattoo. Ask me anything. I have the interest of a 14-year-old boy. I'm good.
Somewhere in the ether that you're forming, there lies a greater Leprechaun truth. And I think that that's something that I've been trying to get to, that Gary's been kind of stunting my development on. So I appreciate both of you being so open to the idea that these radical ideas can exist within the Leprechaun cinematic universe.
So if there is some sort of mega Leprechaun, does that mean that the one that we've been seeing on screen in each of these films, does that mean that we can't kill the Leprechaun? Is the Leprechaun incapable of dying?
I think the answer is yes.
You can't it cannot.
I mean, he died 4 times in this movie alone.
He kept dying in this movie and coming back. Even when they killed him at the end, when he is jettisoned out of the airlock.
Don't spoil this last scene, please.
Okay, you know what? Because indeed.
Well, okay, but can we earmuffs or so? I think we have to discuss it on the podcast.
Okay, because that's okay.
You know,
okay,
we can.
You're right.
You know, Jeff, we can discuss it in another segment. That way we don't spoil it. Because I think if we've done anything over the course of this conversation, is we've spent a considerable amount of time trying to convince ELUCID to watch the rest of this movie.
It's true, and I mean, I hate to put him on the spot, but what do you think, pal? You gonna jump in with 2 feet? Are you going to hit that last 30 minutes? We got to know.
I got to buy it again, bro. I'm waiting for the Venmo.
Okay.
You know what? I think we should start a GoFundMe for how much is it on
to get me to
YouTube?
finish Lep 4. Yeah. Yeah, I think we can do it today. Today would be the day. People feeling generous today. Today would be the
50
day.
cents get you like a shout out from you or something.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like set it up like a reel.
So I think that's what we're gonna do. I think we're gonna set up a GoFundMe
There it
and
goes.
try to get people to
There it
support
goes.
you watching
Hell yeah.
Leprechaun movies.
Hell yeah.
I think we can do this. I think we can do this. I think we can make this dream happen.
What do we need? How much did you buy the original cinematic universe for? $25?
Yeah, when I bought the movies on Apple, I spent $25. So we need to raise
the whole collection.
With tax, so we need to raise $30.
We need to raise like $30 to make up for the one that you originally rented, and then to commit you to the next one.
Anything over 30 goes to food banks.
Yes, there we go. I think we figured it out.
How much are you going to commit though? Are you going to watch all of them? Because I can't see you in a world where you can do all of them, man.
You said there were 7 or 8.
There's 6. There's 6.
There's 6 in the original cinematic,
and then 2 reboots.
We don't talk about the reboots.
No,
damn, I'd give it a shot. Man.
All right.
These are really bugged out.
I love this idea.
You've heard it here first. If you guys donate money to our GoFundMe, and we'll put this up on the web, and we'll put this up on social. If you donate money, we can get ELUCID, a critically acclaimed rapper, to watch the entire Leprechaun series.
Heard it here.
All we need is $30.
All we need is 30. If we can raise $30, and then everything else,
we get over 30,
and everything over 30 goes to food banks. If we can raise $30, we will make this happen.
I would love it. I would be a proud owner of the Leprechaun series. Please, y'all.
Please donate. Thank you.
Gary.
Yes, Jeff.
Gary.
Yeah.
Gary, like the corners of my mind.
Oh boy.
Misty watercolor Gary.
Seriously. Okay, so
Like the way we were.
Oh, come
Scattered
on.
Pictures of the okay.
It keeps going.
You know what though? Gun talk for real.
All right, gun talk.
The actual worst death in that movie was the leprechaun blowing up at the end.
The absolute worst.
It was a massive disappointment.
The leprechaun's deaths in these movies have never been the best parts of these films. But I think this is of the leprechaun's
We did get
various
multiple deaths in this one though, which did make up for it a little bit. Him diving on the explosive was pretty sick.
Yeah, and his head being like having come off his body and being in the sand, like that was pretty cool. I will say that.
That was the problem is that the death went downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah, because
you were a big face guy, and I'm a little surprised. But let's continue talking about this.
No, yeah. Like we can agree to disagree on the best death, but I think you and I are right. I think you and I are on the same page here. In a rare move on this show, where we expect a bit better, especially after a film that had 9 kills in one way or another, and some pretty amazing.
And the one thing a cheap movie can do is blow shit up. The more shit you blow up, the happier the execs are probably.
This was a terrible explosion. Like the CGI was atrocious, and they've exploded him before. That's what really drives me nuts. It's like he's blown up before. They've done it, and they've done it with what it looks like an actual thing getting blown up. This was just like, it's like he's in space. Kaboom.
Yeah. That said, the actual full-on ending with the extended middle finger of the leprechaun, that was a real treat.
That was a joy. That was
I was really excited that he got to give him one last flip up. Because, like, he's not dead. He's just sort of roaming in the ever-expanding universe.
But it,
Right?
it also, yeah, I mean, like, look, you recognize he's not dead, and because you can't kill the leprechaun.
Can't kill the
established
leprechaun.
it. We've established that every time he dies, he doesn't actually die.
Right.
Like,
He's still the leprechaun.
You may be rid of him for now, or he might.
You got him off the ship, which is a big deal.
Yeah, like getting off the ship is important, but it's like what I don't understand. Then, this is what I'm really what's really been getting to me, and why I'm having trouble sleeping these days is
the pandemic.
Yes, God,
sure, okay, go ahead.
But if he can reconstitute in the urinary tract of a human being while leaving the body parts that have been blown off of him behind, how is it that in the vacuum of space, he can't do the same thing by going into some kind of air duct or something on the ship and getting right back on and making a new version of himself?
I think that space has a controlling quality to it to where you can't resist it.
That's nonsense. No, that's nonsense. That's utter nonsense.
But how do you know? None of the, no other mythical creatures come from space.
He was able to manifest a middle finger in the vacuum of space.
Right. He can move individual parts that are still partially intact, but he cannot reconstitute himself to make decisions based as a living being per se. He's at the mercy of space.
No, I think that's a stretch. I think that's a wild stretch.
What do you mean it's a stretch? What are you stretching?
You're stretching.
It's a ridiculous film. I'm allowed to stretch it the way I want to stretch it.
Well, I mean, if you're just going to add ridiculous on top of ridiculousness, then I don't even know what to say at this point.
Are you listening to our podcast, Gary?
I mean, I try to tune in. Once in a while.
A recently lauded rapper, a huge rapper to me.
It is a fantastic
We're talking about Leprechaun 4.
Yeah, we've had some great guests on the show. I don't see what's absurd or ridiculous about that.
You know what? You want more gun talk? You want some straight up gun talk?
Yeah, let's hear it.
They didn't send Chucky to space.